My name is Aurelia Martinez, and I am 28 years old. Last month, I became the villain in my own family story simply because I refused to attend my sister's wedding. They called me jealous, petty, and vindictive. What they did not know was that I had discovered something that would destroy everything they thought they knew about our perfect family. The video I sent them 3 days after the wedding ceremony did not just shock them. It obliterated decades of carefully constructed lies and revealed the truth about who is really the villain in our family. Where are you watching this from today? If this story resonates with you, or if you have ever dealt with family betrayal, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama stories. Trust me, what happens next will make you question everything you think you know about family loyalty and blood bonds. Growing up, my sister Serafina was always the golden child. 5 years younger than me, she possessed this ethereal beauty that made everyone stop and stare. Long platinum blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and a smile that could charm anyone into doing her bidding. Our parents Miguel and Carmen Martinez treated her like she was made of precious porcelain, while I was the sturdy, dependable older sister who could handle anything life threw at her. The dynamic in our household was crystal clear from an early age. Serafina got dance lessons, piano lessons, and modeling opportunities. I got told to be responsible and help around the house. When she broke something valuable, it was an accident. When I made any mistake, it was carelessness that needed to be corrected immediately. I learned to accept this imbalance because I loved my family even if the love did not always feel equally distributed. Everything started unraveling 6 months ago when I was helping Mom clean out the attic. We were preparing for Serafina's engagement party, and Mom wanted to find some old family photos to create a nostalgic display. As we dug through dusty boxes filled with memories, I stumbled upon a manila envelope tucked behind some Christmas decorations. The envelope was thick, bulging with documents, and had my father's handwriting scrawled across the front. Important, do not lose. Curiosity got the better of me. Inside, I found bank statements, legal documents, and correspondence that made my blood run cold. For the past 15 years, my parents had been systematically stealing money from a trust fund that my grandmother had established for my college education. The trust contained over $200,000, money that was supposed to pay for my education and help me start my adult life. Instead, that money had been funneled into Serafina's endless activities, her modeling portfolio, her car, and now, apparently, her wedding. The documents revealed a pattern of forged signatures and falsified documents. My father had been acting as the trustee and had convinced the bank that I had requested the money be redirected for family emergencies. There were photocopies of my supposed signature authorizing these transfers, signatures that I had never made. The handwriting was close, but not quite right. Someone had been practicing my signature and using it to steal my inheritance. As I read through the papers, my hands started shaking. Every dance recital, every piano lesson, every expensive dress Serafina had worn to school events had been paid for with money that belonged to me. The car she drove in high school, my money. The professional headshots for her modeling career, my money. The down payment on the apartment she shared with her fiancé Marcus, you guessed it, my money. But the most devastating discovery was yet to come. Buried at the bottom of the envelope was a handwritten note from my mother to my father dated just 3 months ago. In her familiar script, she had written, Miguel, we need to use the remaining $60,000 from Aurelia's trust for Serafina's wedding. She will never find out, and even if she does, she loves family too much to cause problems. Serafina deserves her dream wedding, and Aurelia is strong enough to make her own way without help. The casual dismissal of my future, the assumption that my love for family would make me complicit in my own theft, felt like a physical blow. They had not just stolen my money. They had stolen my choices, my opportunities, my ability to pursue my dreams without the burden of crushing student debt. I had worked multiple jobs throughout college, lived on ramen noodles and generic groceries, all while believing that I was building character and independence. Meanwhile, my sister lived like a princess on money that should have secured my future. I sat in that dusty attic for over an hour reading and rereading the documents, hoping I had misunderstood something, but the evidence was clear and undeniable. My family had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible, and they had done it with the assumption that I would never discover their crime. The wedding invitation on Serafina's dresser suddenly took on a different meaning. This was not just a celebration of love, it was a celebration funded by my stolen inheritance. Every flower arrangement, every table setting, every moment of joy would be paid for with money that had been taken from my future, without my knowledge or consent. That night I did not sleep. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with the stolen documents spread before me, making copies of everything. I photographed each page with my phone, scanned important documents, and created a digital backup of the evidence. The rage I felt was cold and calculating rather than hot and impulsive. This was not the time for emotional outbursts or tearful confrontations. This was the time for strategy. My first instinct was to storm downstairs and confront my parents immediately. I wanted to throw the evidence in their faces and demand an explanation. But something held me back. Maybe it was the memory of every time they had dismissed my concerns as overthinking, or maybe it was the realization that they had been planning this deception for over a decade. Either way, I knew that a direct confrontation would only give them time to craft excuses and minimize the damage. Instead, I decided to do some research. I contacted my grandmother's former attorney, a man named Robert Chen, who had handled her estate. When I called his office, the next morning I explained that I was trying to understand the details of my trust fund. Mr. Chen was immediately concerned when I described what I had found. Miss Martinez, he said, his voice heavy with worry, your grandmother specifically created that trust to ensure your educational future. The terms were very clear. The money was to be used exclusively for your college expenses, and any remaining funds were to be distributed to you upon graduation. What you are describing sounds like embezzlement. He agreed to meet with me that afternoon to review the documents. When I showed him the forged signatures and falsified authorizations, his expression grew grim. This is a serious crime, he told me. Your parents have been systematically stealing from you for years. We need to contact the authorities immediately. But I was not ready for that step yet. I asked Mr. Chen to prepare a legal analysis of the situation and calculate exactly how much money had been stolen, including interest and penalties. I also asked him to research what legal options were available to me. He promised to have a comprehensive report ready within the week. During this time, I maintained normal contact with my family. I attended Sunday dinners, responded to text messages about wedding preparations, and even helped Mom address invitation envelopes. Every interaction felt surreal, like I was playing a role in a theater production where only I knew the real script. They chatted about flower arrangements and menu selections, while I smiled and nodded all the time, knowing that every expense was funded by money stolen from my future. The hardest part was watching Serafina glow with happiness as she described her dream wedding. She showed me pictures of the venue, a historic mansion with gardens that cost more per day than I made in 2 months. She talked about the designer dress she had ordered, the professional photographer, the string quartet for the ceremony. With each detail, I calculated the cost in my head, wondering how much of my inheritance was being spent on each element. Aurelia, you have been so quiet about the wedding, Serafina said one evening as we sat in her apartment looking at centerpiece options. Are you not excited for me? The irony was overwhelming. She was asking me to celebrate a wedding paid for with money stolen from my trust fund. Of course I am excited for you, I lied smoothly. I just want everything to be perfect, and I did want it to be perfectly NDA, perfectly documented for the legal case I was building. Mr. Chen called me exactly 1 week later with his analysis. The total amount stolen from my trust fund was $237,000, including interest that should have been compounding over the years. But more importantly, he had discovered that the statute of limitations on this type of financial crime was 10 years from the date of discovery, not from the date of the crime itself. This meant that I could pursue both civil and criminal charges against my parents. However, he warned me this will likely destroy your family relationships permanently. Are you prepared for that consequence? I thought about his question for days. Was I prepared to lose my family over money? But then I realized I was asking the wrong question. The real question was, had my family already chosen money over me years ago when they decided to steal my inheritance? The answer was obvious. They had made their choice 15 years ago. I was just finally learning about it. 2 weeks before the wedding, I made a decision that would change everything. I was not going to confront my family privately or give them a chance to explain away their crimes with tears and apologies. Instead, I was going to document everything and let them dig their own graves with their lies and gaslighting. I started by having a casual conversation with my Aunt Rosa, my mother's sister who had always been close to our family. Rosa was a straight-talking woman who valued honesty above all else. I invited her for coffee and gradually steered the conversation toward family finances and my grandmother's estate. "Rosa," I said carefully, "do you remember Grandma mentioning a trust fund she set up for my education?" Rosa's face lit up with recognition. Of course, she was so proud of that fund. She saved for years to make sure you could go to college without debt. She always said education was the one thing no one could take away from you. Rosa paused, studying my expression. "You did use the money for college, right? Your parents told me it covered all your expenses." "That is interesting," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "Because I worked 3 jobs during college and graduated with $40,000 in student loan debt, I was never told about any trust fund." Rosa's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. The silence stretched between us as the implications of what I had said sank in. "Aurelia, are you telling me that your parents never gave you access to your grandmother's trust fund?" I pulled out my phone and showed her some of the documents I had photographed. Rosa's expression shifted from confusion to horror as she realized what she was seeing. "This is theft," she whispered. "This is outright theft from their own daughter." Rosa became my first ally in what I was beginning to think of as my campaign for justice. She was appalled by what my parents had done and immediately offered to help in any way she could. More importantly, she confirmed details about the trust fund that I had not known, including the fact that my grandmother had specifically told several family members about her plans to ensure my education was funded. "Your grandmother would be spinning in her grave if she knew what they had done," Rosa said, tears in her eyes. "She loved you so much, Aurelia. This money was her way of making sure you had opportunities she never had." Next, I reached out to my cousin Marcus's sister Elena, who worked as a forensic accountant. Elena and I had always gotten along well, and I knew she could help me understand the full scope of the financial manipulation. When I explained the situation, she was immediately interested in helping. "Financial elder abuse and trust fund theft are serious crimes," Elena told me. "But proving them requires careful documentation and analysis. Let me look at everything you have found." Elena spent an entire weekend going through the documents with a fine-tooth comb. What she discovered was even worse than I had initially realized. Not only had my parents stolen the trust fund money, but they had also been claiming me as a dependent on their tax returns for years after I had moved out collecting tax benefits, while I filed my own returns as an independent adult. This dual filing had resulted in additional fraudulent tax savings that they had pocketed. "Aurelia," Elena said, her voice grim, "this is not just family drama. This is organized financial fraud that spans over a decade. Your parents have committed multiple felonies, and they have done it systematically and deliberately." Armed with Elena's professional analysis and Rosa's confirmation of the trust fund's original purpose, I felt ready to take the next step. But I still was not ready for direct confrontation. Instead, I decided to test my parents' willingness to lie to my face. During a family dinner 2 weeks before the wedding, I casually brought up the topic of college funding. "You know," I said, "sometimes I feel bad about how much debt I accumulated during college. I wish Grandma could have helped somehow, but I know she did not have much money to spare." The lies came so easily from my parents that it was almost impressive. Dad immediately jumped in with his explanation. "Your grandmother wanted to help, but she was worried about spoiling you. She thought it would build character if you worked for your education." Mom nodded along enthusiastically. "She always said that people appreciate things more when they earn them themselves. She was so proud of how hard you worked in college." Serafina, completely oblivious to the undercurrents of the conversation, added her own commentary. "Besides, working through college probably taught you valuable life skills. Look how responsible and independent you turned out to be." The irony was staggering. They were praising me for character traits that had been forged through financial hardship they had artificially created by stealing money meant to help me. Every word out of their mouths was a lie, and they delivered these lies with such conviction that I almost admired their audacity. That night I called Elena and Rosa to debrief about the dinner conversation. They looked me straight in the eye and lied without hesitation. I told them, "They have been planning and practicing these lies for years." "That seals it," Rosa said firmly. "They are not victims of poor judgment or financial pressure. They are criminals who have been deliberately deceiving you for over a decade. You owe them nothing." Elena agreed. The fact that they are still lying even when given opportunities to come clean shows that they have no intention of making this right voluntarily. Legal action might be the only way to get justice. As the wedding approached, my parents and Serafina continued planning their elaborate celebration funded by my stolen inheritance. They talked about the expensive flowers, the premium menu, the professional videographer who would capture every moment of the special day. Each detail felt like salt in an open wound, but I maintained my composure and continued gathering evidence. The final straw came 1 week before the wedding when Mom called me in a panic. "Aurelia, honey, we have a small financial emergency. The caterer is demanding the final payment earlier than expected, and we are just a little short. Could you possibly lend us $5,000? We will pay you back right after the wedding, I promise." The audacity was breathtaking. They had already stolen over $200,000 from me, and now they were asking me to voluntarily give them even more money to fund a wedding paid for with my inheritance. The request was so outrageous that I almost laughed out loud. "Mom," I said carefully, $5,000 is a lot of money for me. "Can I think about it?" "Of course, sweetheart," she said, relief evident in her voice. "You are such a good daughter. I knew we could count on you." That night, I made my final decision. I was not going to attend the wedding, and I was not going to give them another penny of my money. More importantly, I was going to make sure they understood exactly why I was making these choices. But I was not going to tell them directly. I was going to let them figure it out for themselves, just like I had been forced to discover their betrayal on my own. 3 days before the wedding, I called my mother with my decision about the loan. "Mom, I have thought about the $5,000 you requested, and I am afraid I cannot help you with that amount right now." The disappointment in her voice was immediate. "Oh, Aurelia, I was really hoping you could help us out. This wedding means everything to Serafina, and we want it to be perfect." "I understand," I replied smoothly. "Actually, Mom, I have been thinking a lot about money lately, and I wanted to ask you something. Do you remember if Grandma ever mentioned setting up any kind of savings account or fund for my education? I was talking to some friends about college funding, and it got me wondering." The pause on the other end of the line was telling. "No, honey, I do not think she ever mentioned anything like that." "Why do you ask?" "Just curious. Some of my friends received help from grandparents, and I wondered if Grandma had ever considered something similar." "Well, you know your grandmother loved you very much, but she believed in the value of hard work. She thought you would be stronger if you earned your way through college yourself." Another lie delivered with practiced ease. I had given her a perfect opportunity to come clean, and she had chosen deception instead. "Actually, Mom, I also wanted to let you know that I will not be able to attend the wedding this weekend." The silence that followed was deafening. "What do you mean you will not be attending, Aurelia? This is your sister's wedding. This is one of the most important days of her life." "I know how important it is," I said calmly. "But I have some personal issues I need to deal with right now, and I do not think I would be good company at a celebration." "Personal issues?" Mom's voice was rising. "What personal issues could possibly be more important than your sister's wedding? Aurelia, this is selfish and unacceptable behavior. I am sorry you feel that way, but my decision is final." The conversation ended badly with Mom hanging up in frustration. Within an hour, I received angry calls from Dad and Serafina. Dad accused me of being jealous and vindictive. Serafina tearfully asked what she had done to make me hate her so much. The emotional manipulation was intense, but I had expected it. "I do not hate you, Serafina," I told her honestly. "I love you very much. But I cannot attend your wedding, and I hope someday you will understand why." That does not make any sense, she cried. You are being cryptic and weird, and you are ruining what should be the happiest time of my life. Why are you being so cruel? I wanted to tell her the truth right then. I wanted to explain that her happiness was built on money stolen from my future, but I held back. The wedding was in 3 days, and there was no point in destroying it now when I could make a much more powerful statement afterward. The next 2 days were filled with increasingly hostile messages from my family. They called me jealous, selfish, and mentally unstable. They suggested I needed therapy to deal with my obvious issues with Serafina's success. The gaslighting was relentless, but it only strengthened my resolve. Rosa and Elena checked in with me regularly during those difficult days. Are you sure you want to handle it this way? Rosa asked. It is not too late to confront them directly and give them a chance to make things right. But I knew that chance had already passed. They had been given multiple opportunities to tell the truth, and they had chosen lies every single time. They had made their choice years ago, when they decided to steal from their own daughter. Now they would have to live with the consequences. The wedding day arrived, and I spent it working on a project that had consumed me for weeks. I was creating a comprehensive video presentation that would expose every detail of my parents' financial crimes. Using Elena's forensic analysis, I had created charts showing exactly how much money had been stolen and when. I had photographed every relevant document. I had recorded the conversations where my parents had lied directly to my face about the trust fund. Most importantly, I had researched the cost of every single element of Serafina's wedding. The venue rental, the catering, the flowers, the photography, the music, the dress, everything. I had created a detailed breakdown showing exactly how much of my stolen inheritance was being spent on each aspect of the celebration. The video was titled "How My Family Stole My Inheritance to Pay for My Sister's Dream Wedding." It was 17 minutes long and meticulously documented every aspect of their betrayal. I included audio recordings of my parents lying about the trust fund, photos of the forged signatures, bank statements showing the stolen transfers, and receipts from wedding vendors. The most powerful part of the video was the ending where I addressed my family directly. Mom, Dad, and Serafina, I said, looking straight into the camera, by the time you watch this, your wedding will be over. I hope it was everything you dreamed it would be, because it cost me my entire inheritance. For 15 years you stole from my future to fund your present. You forged my signature, lied to banks, and betrayed my trust in the most fundamental way possible. When I discovered what you had done, I gave you multiple chances to tell me the truth. Instead, you chose to continue lying to my face while asking me to loan you even more money. I paused for effect before continuing. You called me jealous for refusing to attend the wedding. You accused me of being selfish and vindictive. But the truth is, I could not bring myself to celebrate a party funded by money stolen from my own future. Every flower arrangement, every course of dinner, every note of music was paid for with money that belonged to me. The video concluded with my legal options. I explained that I had consulted with attorneys and forensic accountants, and that I was prepared to pursue both civil and criminal charges. You stole over $200,000 from your own daughter, I said. That is not a family disagreement, that is a felony. 3 days after the wedding, I sent the video to every member of my extended family simultaneously. I posted it to a private Facebook group that included aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends. I also sent copies directly to my parents and Serafina with a simple message. Now you know why I could not attend the wedding. The response to my video was immediate and explosive. Within hours of sending it, my phone was ringing nonstop with calls from shocked family members. The reactions ranged from outrage at my parents to disbelief that such betrayal was possible within our family. Rosa was the first to call. Aurelia, honey, I am so sorry. I had no idea the situation was this extensive. What your parents did is unforgivable. My uncle Roberto, Dad's brother, called next. His voice was shaking with anger. Miguel has always been proud and stubborn, but I never thought he was a thief. This is beyond family drama, MIA. This is criminal behavior. But the most heartbreaking call came from my grandmother's best friend, Mrs. Valdez, who is now in her 80s. Your abuela saved every penny for that trust fund, she told me through tears. She worked extra shifts at the hospital, brought lunch from home every day, never bought herself anything nice. All because she wanted to make sure you could get an education without struggling like she did. If she knew what they had done with her sacrifice, the calls kept coming throughout the day. Cousins who had always looked up to my parents expressed their shock and disappointment. Family friends who had attended the wedding felt sick knowing that the beautiful celebration had been funded through theft. Even some of Serafina's friends reached out to express their horror at what they had learned. But the most significant response came from my immediate family, or rather the complete lack of response. For the first 24 hours after I sent the video, I heard nothing from my parents or Serafina. No angry phone calls, no tearful apologies, no attempts at explanation. Just radio silence. When they finally did respond, it was not what I expected. Instead of acknowledging their crimes or attempting to make amends, they went into full damage control mode. Dad called me 48 hours after receiving the video, and his tone was cold and calculated. "Aurelia, what you have done is inexcusable. You have humiliated your family and destroyed your sister's wedding memories with lies and accusations." Lies I could not hide my incredulity. "Dad, I have bank statements, forged signatures, and recordings of you lying to my face. What part of this is a lie? You have taken some paperwork out of context and created a conspiracy theory to justify your jealousy of Serafina's success. This is delusional behavior, and we will not tolerate it." The gaslighting was breathtaking. Even confronted with irrefutable evidence of their crimes, they were trying to convince me that I was the problem. "Dad, I have consulted with attorneys and forensic accountants. They all agree that what you did constitutes embezzlement and fraud. Those lawyers are just trying to make money off family drama," he replied dismissively. "No prosecutor would waste time on this nonsense." But Dad was wrong about prosecutorial interest. Elena had already put me in touch with a prosecutor who specialized in financial crimes, and she was very interested in my case. Elder abuse and trust fund theft were priorities in our district, and the documentation I had gathered was compelling evidence. Mom's response was even more disturbing than Dad's denial. When she finally called me, she took a completely different approach. "Aurelia, sweetheart, I think you might be having some kind of mental health crisis. This obsession with money and conspiracy theories is not like you. Maybe you should talk to someone about these feelings." "Mom, are you seriously suggesting that I imagined forged bank documents and falsified signatures? I think you are under a lot of stress, and sometimes stress can make us see patterns and connections that are not really there. Your father and I love you, and we want to help you get better." They were trying to paint me as mentally unstable rather than acknowledge their crimes. It was a clever strategy. If they could convince people that I was delusional, they could dismiss my evidence as the product of a disturbed mind. But their strategy had a fatal flaw. Too many people had now seen the evidence, and too many financial professionals had verified its authenticity. Rosa had already spoken to several family members about the documentation she had seen. Elena had shared her forensic analysis with colleagues. Mr. Chen had confirmed the legal violations to other attorneys. The damage to their reputation was spreading faster than they could contain it. Within a week of my video revelation, Dad had been asked to step down from his position on the church finance committee. Mom was quietly removed from her volunteer role managing the charity auction at her country club. The whispers and sideways glances wherever they went made it clear that the truth was becoming common knowledge. Serafina's response was the most complex. She called me 1 week after the video, and her voice was a mixture of anger, confusion, and hurt. "Aurelia, I do not understand why you are doing this to our family. Even if what you are saying is true about Mom and Dad, why did you have to involve me? I had nothing to do with any financial decisions. Serafina, your wedding cost $90,000. Every penny of that money was stolen from my trust fund. How could you not be involved? I did not know where the money came from," she protested. "Mom and Dad told me they had been saving for years. I thought it was their money. Did you ever wonder how they suddenly had $90,000 for a wedding? When they had always claimed to be living paycheck to paycheck?" The silence on her end was telling. I trusted them. I thought they wanted to give me a beautiful wedding. They did want to give you a beautiful wedding. They just decided to pay for it with money they stole from me." Serafina started crying. This is not my fault, Aurelia. I did not know anything about a trust fund. I did not ask them to steal from you. You are right, I admitted. You did not know about the theft, and you did not ask for it. But you benefited from it, and now you know the truth. The question is, what are you going to do about it? That question would define the rest of our relationship. The legal proceedings moved faster than I had anticipated. With Elena's forensic analysis and Mr. Chen's legal expertise, we had built an airtight case that even my parents' attorney advised them not to contest. The evidence of forged signatures, falsified bank documents, and systematic theft over 15 years was overwhelming. My parents agreed to a plea deal that required full restitution of the stolen money plus interest and penalties. The final amount was $263,000. They also faced probation, community service, and permanent restrictions on their ability to serve as financial trustees or handle other people's money. The criminal charges sent shockwaves through our extended family and social circles. People who had known my parents for decades struggled to reconcile the image of the upstanding religious couple with the reality of their systematic financial crimes. Many family members felt betrayed not just by the theft itself but by the years of lies and manipulation that had covered it up. Serafina's response to the legal proceedings revealed the true depth of her character. After the initial shock and denial, she became angry, not at me for exposing the truth, but at our parents for putting her in an impossible position. They made me an accessory to theft without my knowledge, she told me during one of our difficult conversations. Every time I posted a wedding photo or talked about how generous and loving our parents were, I was helping them maintain their lies. To her credit, Serafina made a decision that surprised everyone, including me. She and Marcus decided to sell their apartment, the one that had been purchased with a down payment from my stolen inheritance, and give me the proceeds. It was not the full amount that had been taken, but it was a significant gesture that showed she understood the gravity of what had happened. I cannot give you back your trust fund or undo the years of struggle you went through because of what they did, she told me tearfully. But I can make sure I am not continuing to benefit from money that was stolen from you. That decision created a permanent rift between Serafina and our parents. They accused her of being brainwashed by my lies and choosing money over family loyalty. The irony was staggering. They were accusing her of prioritizing money after they had spent 15 years stealing money from their own daughter. The family dynamics shifted dramatically in the months following the legal resolution. Rosa, Elena, and several cousins rallied around me, forming a new support system built on honesty and mutual respect rather than obligation and guilt. We had regular dinners, celebrated holidays together, and created new traditions that did not involve the toxic dynamics I had grown up with. My parents, meanwhile, found themselves increasingly isolated. Many family members could not look at them the same way after learning about the theft and the years of lies. The respect and admiration they had enjoyed in the community evaporated as word of their crimes spread. They were forced to sell their house to pay the restitution, and they moved to a smaller apartment across town, where they could start over without constant reminders of their fall from grace. The most unexpected development was the strengthening of my relationship with Serafina. Once she understood the full scope of what had happened, she became one of my strongest advocates. She publicly supported my decision to pursue legal action and cut ties with our parents. Blood does not give you the right to steal from family, she said firmly to anyone who suggested I was being too harsh. What they did was unforgivable. We started having regular sister dates, coffee shopping, movies, activities we had never done together. Growing up because of the competitive dynamic our parents had fostered between us. For the first time in our lives, we were building a relationship based on who we actually were rather than the roles our parents had assigned to us. I always felt guilty about being the favorite, she admitted to me one afternoon. I knew the way they treated you was not fair, but I was afraid that if I spoke up, they would stop loving me too. That fear kept both of us trapped, I replied. You were afraid of losing their love, and I was afraid of being accused of jealousy or bitterness. They used our love for each other and our family to manipulate both of us. The restitution money allowed me to pay off my student loans and start building the financial security that should have been mine years earlier. More importantly, it gave me the freedom to pursue opportunities I had never been able to consider when I was struggling under the burden of debt my parents had artificially created. I used part of the money to start a small nonprofit organization that helps young adults who have been victims of family financial abuse. The number of people who reached out after my story became public was heartbreaking and eye-opening. Financial manipulation by family members is far more common than most people realize, and victims often struggle with guilt and shame that prevents them from seeking help. The organization provides legal resources, emotional support, and practical guidance for people navigating the complex intersection of family relationships and financial crimes. We work with attorneys, therapists, and financial advisors who understand that these cases involve much more than just money. They involve the fundamental betrayal of trust by the people who are supposed to love and protect us most. Through this work, I have met dozens of people with stories similar to mine. Adult children whose college funds were raided for family vacations or siblings' weddings. Young adults who discovered their identities had been stolen by parents who opened credit cards and loans in their names. Elderly grandparents whose savings had been systematically drained by adult children who claimed to be helping manage their finances. Each story reinforces my belief that I made the right choice in pursuing justice rather than keeping the peace. These crimes thrive in secrecy and shame. When families pressure victims to stay quiet for the sake of family unity, they enable the abuse to continue and often expand to other family members. My relationship with my parents remains severed, and I have made peace with that reality. They have never acknowledged the full extent of the harm they caused, never apologized without conditions or excuses, and never shown genuine remorse for their actions. Until they can honestly confront what they did and why it was wrong, there is no foundation for rebuilding trust. Some people think I am too harsh or unforgiving. They suggest that family should be able to overcome financial disagreements, especially after restitution has been paid. But they misunderstand the nature of what happened. This was not a financial disagreement or a mistaken judgment. This was 15 years of systematic deception, manipulation, and theft that fundamentally altered the trajectory of my life. The trust fund my grandmother created was not just money. It was her love, her sacrifice, and her dreams for my future made manifest. When my parents stole that money, they stole much more than dollars. They stole opportunities, choices, and the security that comes from knowing your family supports your dreams, rather than sabotaging them for their own benefit. But perhaps the most valuable thing I gained from this entire experience was the understanding that family is not just about blood relations. Family is about people who love you enough to tell you the truth, even when it is difficult. Family is about people who support your growth and success, rather than undermining it for their own benefit. Family is about people who celebrate your achievements rather than stealing from you to fund their own celebrations. Rosa, Elena, Serafina, Marcus, and the community of people I have met through my nonprofit work, these are my chosen family. They have shown me what healthy relationships look like, and they have supported me through the difficult process of healing from years of manipulation and betrayal. Have you ever discovered something about your family that completely changed how you saw your entire childhood? Or maybe you have dealt with financial manipulation by people you trusted. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, or helped you feel less alone in your own family struggles, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about family dynamics and finding your way through difficult relationships. Your support means the world to me, and helps me continue sharing these important conversations about family justice and healing. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that choosing your own peace and well-being over toxic family loyalty is not selfish, it is necessary. Sometimes the greatest act of love you can show yourself and others is refusing to enable harmful behavior, even when it comes from the people who are supposed to love you most.